Hi everyone, welcome back to Jane's on Point. I'm Jane. Today I'm going to share with you how I got to where I am today and my points and miles journey. This all started several years ago when friends of ours invited us to go to Maui. Well, we went, we loved it, and we had an amazing time. So much so that they invited us to come back again the following year. And living in Chicago and being so cold and miserable in January in Chicago, we thought, how do we say no? But then again, how do we justify the high cost of airfare? You know, going to Maui once is on someone's bucket list, but to go back twice, we kind of felt maybe we were being a little bit selfish. But that's when my friend stepped in and decided to tell me about some points and miles that she'd been using to fly. I was very curious. So one day on our trip, she told us all about applying for the American Airlines credit card. Earn a sign-up bonus, use those points to pay for your airfare. We're like, well, that sounds easy enough. So on our flight back to Chicago, we both applied for the American Airlines credit card, and we thought this is great. Well, on the second leg of our trip, we were on US Airways, and we're like, wait, did she say American Airlines or US Airways? Are we doing this wrong? So panicking, we both signed up for the US Airways credit card as well. Well, long story short, US Airways and American Airlines merged, and we had both been approved for both credit cards. We'd earned each sign-up bonus of 50,000 points each. And after the merger, we each had 100,000 points within 3 months of signing up for these cards. So together with 200,000 points, we decided we're going back to Maui. That was the first time we flew business class, and after that trip, it's pretty hard to get my husband to fly economy anywhere, especially when you're paying $5.60 for taxes on a flight from Chicago to Maui in business class. I mean, how do you say no to that? Now, those cards are long since gone. We earned those points, we burned those points, and we've come a long way since then. So fast forward a few years when my husband decides he wants to retire and move to Mexico. Now, we've been traveling to and from Mexico for years on vacations. We do all-inclusives, we do vacation packages, never really had to find airfare separate from that. But now, with him wanting to move to the Riviera Maya, which is Cancun Airport, it was a no-brainer. Southwest flies nonstop to Cancun. We're from Chicago. Chicago is a hub for Southwest. Getting the Southwest credit card was a no-brainer. So we both signed up and got the credit cards back in 2018. And we had already had some points in our account, so we used that for a few flights. But then we got the sign-up bonus, a companion pass here or there, and we used those back in 2018 up until just this past October. It wasn't until this past October that I learned you can actually earn the Southwest sign-up bonus every 2 years. I know, don't laugh at me. I was pretty shocked. Well, I was shocked and a little embarrassed, if I must admit. But that did us fine, because from 2018 up until just this past October, we had enough points in our account to fly back and forth several times, fly our kids down a couple of times, and even fly my parents down. So I'm not complaining. So this past October, when I saw my points dwindling down, I realized I really needed to step up my game here and figure out how I was going to afford or budget flying back and forth to Chicago 2 or 3 times a year for myself and my husband, and hopefully flying our kids down once or twice, and maybe even my parents again. So I'm thinking about all of that, and then we have a friend invite us to go on a cruise. And I started thinking, I got to step up my point game here. I've got to figure out how we can do all of this and budget for it. So this was the point when I decided I was going to dive deeper into the points and miles hobby than I ever have before. And I have to say, I'm learning quite a bit, and I'm quite happy with what I've discovered. So this little series of videos I'm going to do for you is going to show you exactly what I did and how I accumulated these points for not only the Southwest card, but for other credit cards as well, to help book a trip that we're taking this fall. For the sake of ease and not having to go way back in history, I'm going to consider this past October of 2023 the time when I seriously committed to the points and miles hobby, and how it took me from a few thousand points in Southwest account and a few thousand points in my Chase account to enough points to book a 5-week trip in Europe and 18 one-way flights between Chicago and Cancun. Now, this is just part 1, and I'm going to start with the Southwest credit card and what I did to earn over 200,000 points and a companion pass for the next 2 years for my husband. I know we talk a lot about Southwest, and Southwest works great for us because from Cancun to Chicago, it's a nonstop flight and it's very easy. But also think of Southwest as very useful for repositioning flights. For example, I could reposition myself on a flight from here to New York, or here to Chicago, or here to Florida, to fly on an international flight. You know, from here to California, here to Texas, to grab an international flight to several other places. So it's not just a domestic airline that you have to think of when you're thinking of Southwest. There's a lot of ways to use this airline to your benefit when you want to fly international. All right, so here's how I started. The first thing I did was I canceled my old Southwest Airlines credit card. It was the Southwest personal card I've had since 2018. I canceled that, I waited a week, and then I signed up for a Southwest Airlines business credit card, which had a sign-up bonus of 60,000 points. I waited 30 days, I signed up for a Southwest personal card, which at that time had a 75,000 point sign-up bonus. So I signed up for both of these cards, one in November and one in December. I used them for all of my everyday purchases, groceries, insurance, everything that I was going to charge, I put on those two cards. But I did not meet the minimum spend requirement until after January 1st. And the key to that is I did not want that sign-up bonus to hit my account until after the start of the calendar year. And for those of you who've watched my other video on how to get a Southwest Companion Pass, you'll know why. And if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch it. So both of those sign-up bonuses I want to hit in January. So I waited until January 1st, at which point in time I charged the last few $100s on each of those cards. And bam, bam, I had 75,000 points for my personal card and 60,000 points for my business card. What does that get you? 135,000 points. What does 135,000 points earned on Southwest get you? A companion pass for the year you earned it and the following year. So I earned this companion pass so I can take my companion, my husband, with me on every flight that I fly for simply paying just the taxes and fees. So now I also have all of those points that I've earned. So the 135,000 points, plus I had 3 referrals from friends and family, so that was another 60,000 points, plus the points that I spent on the card, or earned on the card when I spent my everyday spend. I have over 200,000 Southwest points and a companion pass for my husband. So what did I do with those points? I booked myself 4 round-trip flights to Chicago between January and December of 2024. And I booked myself a one-way flight from Chicago to Cancun. That's 9 flights for me, 9 one-way flights, and my husband's flying with me as a companion. That's 18 one-way flights that I booked with those points. But not only that, I only used just over 95,000 points. So I still have 100,000 points left in my account for next year, plus the companion pass, which doesn't expire to the end of 2025. Now, I know 4 of those flights are round trip to Chicago, and that's for visiting family and friends, holidays and whatnot. But one of them is a repositioning flight. When we come back from Europe, we're flying from Paris to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Cancun. So now, assuming the point value stays about the same, I'll also have enough points for another 4 round trip flights to visit family and friends in Chicago next year. But I'll admit, one of these flights I did book this year was outrageously priced point-wise because it is over the Christmas holiday. But now we get to go home for Christmas with our family, and we're only paying for taxes and fees on each flight. I'd have to say that's a great win with Southwest Airlines, their companion pass, and their credit card sign-up bonuses. Now, this is just part 1 of my video series, so stay tuned for part 2 when I tell you which credit card I got next and what I use those points for. Because remember, we're talking 5 weeks in Europe, covering Spain, where we're going to Barcelona, Zaragoza, La Rioja, San Sebastian, and then we're heading over to Tuscany, where we have 2 weeks in Tuscany, and then we're going to head to Paris for a few days, and we may even hit Amsterdam. So stay tuned for part 2. We're going to be earning some amazing points and traveling to some great places. Happy travels!